There is a huge problem within the Second Amendment community. I would make the argument that there are no true 2A spaces. There's a handful of companies and small groups that are absolutely entirely for the Second Amendment. There's a few organizations with very narrow goals. The Firearms Policy Coalition, the Gun Owners of America, and I'd argue companies like Rare Breed or SB Tactical exist specifically to extend people's rights. But those aren't spaces. Those are companies, small groups of individuals who either focus on the legal impacts of gun rights or do the economic equivalent of shitposting as a way of challenging the limits of the law and expanding rights as a result. I say that with love. Rare Breed set up their factory, so if they are raided, you have to go through their lawyer's office first, because they intended to get raided by the ATF, knowing how controversial what they made would be, and dear God, we should all hope to have the gargantuan levels of testicular fortitude required for that. There's Deterrence Dispensed, a group of based gun designers, but they're hyper decentralized. Many of the people involved have to remain anonymous for a variety of reasons, and others are too far apart to really have it be one space. It's more a decentralized group, an incredibly necessary one, but again, if we're talking about spaces, people coming together and supporting each other on a regular basis, Deterrence Dispensed is too decentralized. They are absolutely necessary, and they kind of have to remain in that form, but they don't count for this. Public ranges exist largely to serve a specific population and often de facto ban specific groups like beginners. Shooting clubs will self-segregate, requiring you to be friends of somebody who is already a member to get access. Public spaces like woods, where you can legally go target shoot, at least near me, aren't 2A spaces either, really. Plenty, arguably most, are actually there for everything and happen to just have some 2A fun options, if they do at all, and they require knowing the rules in the first place to be able to access that. And gun shops can absolutely start becoming selective about who they choose to serve, and all of that leads to the point of this video. A lot of people who have pull over the educational and entertainment content related to firearms, there's no universe where we can argue that they aren't a problem anymore. I've tried to pretend like you can just assume the best about folks. Clearly, maybe people who are problematic just don't know anyone who's queer. Grand Thumb, for example. He's built his entire channel identity around queer bashing, but he sent Tactical Girlfriend a message a long time ago saying that she made good stuff. You can't be that evil if you sent her a cool message, right? He stopped making the joke, maybe? I tried to assume the best, so maybe he just doesn't know queer people. First of all, it's worth knowing it's not just one or two times that he's done that. He made his entire channel identity around that.
Ladies, gentlemen, and they often forgotten, but often overlooked, not by me, attack helicopter, whatever you identify as, F-16s being transitioned out for F-35s. Welcome.
Going through the videos in this, he starts every video for years saying my gender is a joke. And if you thought that was something he grew out of because he doesn't make the joke at the start of his most recent videos, oh boy, do I have some disappointing news for you. This is Tactical Girlfriend. If you're not following her, you're wrong. Go fix that. Tactical Girlfriend was nominated for the Gundies. She's no longer up for vote, or I'd say go vote for her. She was removed. I don't know why. I have speculations based on what happened, but they have released multiple conflicting responses. First, it was because they were small and moving fast, and they claimed there was some sort of miscategorization issue, and this is where you can tell that they are using, let's call it manipulative language. And the second message she received is even stranger, claiming she wasn't nominated for female influencer, but a random one that frankly doesn't make sense next to the obvious female influencer category. And that's telling. The nominations aren't a thing that people can accidentally do, and I haven't, despite looking, I haven't found any cases of anybody else who was also rejected. There wasn't a group of this. This happened to her. People voted even during the nomination. She was nominated for the Best Female Performer category. The miscategorization in question is the folks at the Gundies seeing she's trans and not counting that as woman. Having been discriminated against, and being someone with a decently sized channel, she did the sensible thing and told the people who were excited to vote for her that she'd been removed, and she told them the details she had access to. And as if we needed more evidence of why they decided to remove her, people in Garand Thumb's personal circle, including his wife, hi Ashley if you're watching, have decided to leave some hate-filled rants where she posted about it. Misgendering, saying she should ask for a not a man or a woman category. It was pretty clear the fucking problem. They didn't want to include a trans woman because they want their hatred of queerness to be normal, and they are big enough to demand it. They think trans women are men and are offended if you don't agree. And this is where we need to take a hard right turn, because there's a fucking dangerous pattern that, if you don't see it, can seem problematic. Queer kids exist. I can tell you this confidently because I was one. I remember being 13 and being scared shitless because I came out to my sister and her response was to punch me and tell me if I told anyone she'd kill me. I tried to get as much help through my school's GSA as I could, but even the principal hated us and went out of his way to try and shut us down every chance he could. As someone who was an unsupported queer teen, I can tell you queer kids exist. And queer kids, amazingly enough, do better when you tell them that life isn't going to be a hellhole, that there will be people who accept and love them for who they are. Telling a child who is queer, you count and you matter and you aren't disgusting, can reduce the suicide rate among queer teenagers. This is why there is education efforts that reach kids. It's because there's too many legal Alcorns in the universe. And if you don't know who she was and you're at all on the fence about trans people and specifically trans kids, go look up her story now. She was a trans teenager who killed herself, and she sadly is not an exception to the rule, merely one whose suicide note sparked a lot of people trying to make things better. Too many people in the 2A space have a long and disgusting history of actively pushing their followers into the Jugendverderber myth, which is literal Nazi propaganda. See, in the 1930s, when the Nazis wanted to make people hate queerness, they started spreading a myth. See how queer people exist? And some of them are kids? Well, that can't be natural. That must be grooming. They spread the Jugendverderber myth, literally translated into English as corrupter of youth, and often tying that as a Jewish conspiracy to really nail the hate home. The famous pictures that you've seen of book burnings, that's the Hirschfeld Institute for Sexual Study, the first modern trans clinic and medical library. The groomer myth has a very specific origin, and it's horrifying. Garand Thumb and a bunch of people in his circle are out here repeating the narrative. Here he is on Twitter, but I don't need to bother digging up tweets. Here he is on video.
Where we're trying to have drag queens twerk in front of kids, and I'm like, the slippery slope was quick.
Yes.
With under 15 years, under 20 at the very least, and it's insane. And now that we're involving kids in it, man, I just can't. So now we're fighting against it pretty hard because, you know, we on the channel, we're Christian based, dude, and we do believe that there's a right and the wrong. And I know that's really hard for people to come to terms with because everyone's like, oh, there's grays, oh, maybe it's slightly acceptable. It's like, no, there is a right and there is a wrong, and a wrong is 100% going to be twerking for kids. Like, it's ridiculous, dude. So we're going to fight against that. We're going to fight against the things that just aren't correct.
Oh yeah, by the way, the guy he's shooting with is Administrative Results, a terrible human being who's based his channel identity on an ethno-states rogue PMC company. These people aren't 2A for all. They see queer people and decide we shouldn't exist. They just adapt that to whatever form it'll be accepted by others. Perfect example is when a group that actually is pro 2A for all messes with their messaging. The FPC a little while back responded to a troll who said they were for the arming of pedophiles because they supported trans people arming themselves. And they responded by saying that trans folk deserve rights and that the person should, quote, read their constitution. Albeit they screwed up by not rejecting the label that the hateful asshole had put on us. The AK guy, who's one of the people in Garand Thumb's orbit and at the front of the Gundies, dug straight into making an entire video about the funniest memes about how the FPC supports arming pedos. He even mentions the real reasoning and then doubles the fuck down and pretends like there isn't a big enough distinction because he doesn't want there to be one. He wants supporting queer folk and supporting pedos to be the same thing. So when he pushes his hateful nonsense on his followers, he's not just an asshole who hates queer people, he's defending decency. It's literally using the Nazi Jugendverderber myth playbook. And this is after the video where he decides to just flat out use slurs as a funny joke.
So it's a tranny right?
Yeah, we can go there.
Touch it! Come on, you bigot! Come on, touch it! Touch it! Touch it!
And then refused to back down after it was brought up as problematic. The video is still up and people are still acting like he's a decent person to be around with zero apologies ever made. One of the people the AK guy regularly makes content with is Donut Operator. And he recently got banned for streaming for a month after dropping the F slur casually in chat. And 5 seconds on Twitter will show you that, no, he's been doing the same thing. Being queer means you're a pedophile, and being a pedophile means you should die. They all regularly make overlapping content with Alex Zedra. You'll likely recognize from video game appearances and as an Instagram model. And yeah, she is now hanging out with January 6th rioters and pedo jacketing and youth groomer bullshit. And these people know what they're doing. This is not accidental. It's why you have this, and I mean this as a compliment to be clear, you have a solid 7 on Grindr with absolute power bottom energy talking about why gay people are spineless things, telling gun store employees to turn away trans people for being trans, openly calling himself a Christian fundamentalist, fear-mongering about, okay, I'm not gonna lie, this shit was so stupid it swung back around to being funny. Like, it's a look into his psyche. The gays are coming for my night vision. But it's also kind of hard to laugh when he's pushing that Jugendverderber myth. And he tells his followers pretty clearly what to do with those dirty queers. They are clearly arming for a world that thinks being queer is a sign of evil. And he is regularly running drills that really only make sense if your intent is to kill 2 random strangers in a car and a random witness. These are the people who go unchallenged. This is what is leading the way in our space. And people like Tactical are getting cut out because the people who hate her existing have a large enough market share, and the Gundies either don't care to stand in their way, or worse, sign off on the hatred and wish it to be normalized. And in either case, there's no universe where we can say the people in charge of this mess are guiltless. You know what? I lied at the beginning of this. There is one real place where you will find a true 2A space, and that is queer gun spaces. Queer firearm spaces are the only real 2A spaces. If you came to any of our events being respectful, you'd be able to shoot, laugh, and if we had our own awards, anyone could receive it. And therein lies the problem. We don't have our own awards. We are sitting here accepting that the only option is playing their game. Someone needs to make a Firearm Achievements Award, or like a Firearm Awards for Modern Times, something that gets shortened to a Fiery or something. There's a lot of potential there. In range, or somebody who has a decent track record should definitely take up the mantle and try to make spaces that hand out awards that aren't tarnished by hateful assholes who conspire behind the scenes to push their hate as normal. And honestly, wherever this new space comes, every single company that is sponsoring the Gundies, or any of the people we talked about and are not reaching out to queer folk in this space and actively sponsoring them, or who don't step up to sponsor whatever the Fireys ends up being, those companies are the ones to be avoided. And more importantly, resisted and replaced at every possible opportunity with something less hateful. If you want to make the argument this is the only space to go to, yeah, right now this is the only award space for this. But this is not going to be forever. This will be changing soon, and I hope that you all join us. Thank you all for tuning in. I really do fucking appreciate it. Gigantic fucking shout out to my Patreon. Jesus Christ, this one was painful. I had to do so much research in digging into so many hateful assholes, and this one was really not good for my mental health. So yeah, if you want to support me making content like this, please go over to patreon.com/queerarmor. Cheapest one's $1 a day, and it means the fucking world to me. That's gonna be it for now. Stay dangerous, y'all. Keep each other safe. And remember, moral doesn't mean legal, and Stonewall was a fucking riot. Peace.